I'm testing the thinnest paper I've ever worked on with mixed media. And I bought this at Staples. It's as thin as an onion peel, thinner than vellum, just as thin as tissue paper. It's mainly used for like tracing or copying things. And I wanted to see how it would react with different mediums. Honestly, I've seen it used once by somebody and I just wanted to test it for myself. I wanted to know how much wet medium could I add to it before it rips. First, I tested it with acrylic paint. I'm using fluid acrylics and basically just wetting the background and adding fluid acrylics on top. I really didn't know what to expect, and I went under the assumption that the paper will rip or will bubble up. And I just kept on adding color and water to make sure that I really saturated the paper with a lot of water and really tried to make a hole in it to see how much it would last. It is made from wood fiber, which is interesting because I was pleasantly surprised how much it took. Then once I had paint all over, I started using the back of a paintbrush to just kind of add markings, trying to rip it, but it really did not rip. So I said, okay, let's see if I can make some markings with a little bit of cardboard. And I just used the wet paint and marked it all over. Since I had so much paint and I knew that it would take a long time to dry, I just added another onion skin paper on top just to transfer some of the paint and then just added more markings. The reason why I wanted to use this paper is because I wanted to use it as collage paper inside my art journal. And I knew that things like tissue paper, which is really thin, will probably not withhold all this wet paint. It will just rip. The only other product that has worked the same is rice paper, but it's a little bit thicker than this and more fibrous. Then I splattered with some gold just to add more color. And finally, I went with some black ink. This is the P.H. Martin black acrylic ink, and I started kind of squiggling with it and adding markings. And finally, for the first time, where it was so wet that one little piece ripped. Honestly, that was the first time, and it took a long time until it happened. So I set those pages to dry, and I decided to try it with watercolors. I figured it would work similarly, the color won't be as intense. So I wet my background, and using some watercolors, I added color to my background. I basically just painted a little bit with each color just to see how much it would take. I know people use this type of paper to do some watercolor drawings, so I figured this would be amazing to try as well. Then I thought, okay, let me try it with some water-soluble crayons. So I just grabbed a few colors and basically drew on top of it to see how it would take with the crayons themselves to see if it will rip. And I squiggled some loose leaf flowers that I later on will show you how amazing they looked inside the journal. I could have experimented with more products. This would probably be amazing to use with monoprinting, but I didn't want to make this video so long. The only other product that I tried was my Magicals. They do act like watercolors, but I wanted to sprinkle some of the color to see how it would react on top, because the paper is pretty smooth. So I wanted to see how it would look, because I know it doesn't technically absorb things because it's smoother. Kind of reminds me of vellum, but not exactly, much thinner. The colors of the Magicals are more intense, so it looked so beautiful, and I just used a paintbrush to just move things around. And then I even took a little brush and just created some brush marks. This is like a cosmetic brush, just because I wanted to see if it would break. And it didn't, which was great. Here are the 4 pages that I created. I really love those flowers, and I'm going to show you how to use them. So stay tuned. And now I was ready to create in my art journal. I took my 8x8 art journal and started ripping the first paper that I had created. I just love that I had the freedom to create any way I wanted, and that these papers, even though they look like a hot mess, they create really great texture in my art journal. And using some gel medium, I'm just gluing them to the page. I'm gluing them in different areas, so that way I can create lots of color and texture, and then I'm going to blend everything together. Once I glued enough pieces and created my composition, I started adding white gesso. And white gesso helps because it kind of covers all the areas that I don't want to work with. There's some really sharp corners and that I really didn't want to have in my background, although originally I thought I wanted them. So I can use white gesso to cover it all. And I dry brushed the white gesso all over because this paper actually creates an amazing 3D texture that I didn't even expect to happen. So when I was dry brushing on top, I saw this wrinkly texture from the actual collage paper. So I just added white everywhere and covered all the areas that I didn't want to be seen, making sure that I leave white space in the middle because I want to have the flowers go in the middle. I let the gesso dry and in the meantime cut up the 3 flowers that I had created in one of the papers, realizing that I actually want more flowers. So I took the plain paper that I had created, re-wetted with some water, and then took my black Stabilo pencil and drew some more of those loose leaf flowers because I really wanted to have some more for the composition. And then I decided to draw some leaves as well because I figured they would look really good in my background. I cut around all the flowers and leaves and then glued them to my background, creating the composition, which I felt was very whimsical and had a lot of free flow and freedom in it. Since I wanted the leaves and the flowers to kind of stand out more from the background, I decided to take some of the magicals and just add a little bit more color inside the leaves and inside the flowers. I added some like magenta color in the leaves. And then in the flower petals, I added some blue so they could really stand out from the background because right now all the colors kind of mishmash together and I was able to basically help them stand out. Like with any art journal, I love adding splatters. So I took some black ink and started adding splatters because I feel like the black was already in the background and then it could tie it all in together. I also used the same ink and added some lines and markings on the edges just to tie it all in. I love adding some markings and finishing touches to my journal so it looks cohesive. And once it was dry, I added one of the quotes from my printables that I sell on Etsy. Adding splatters and other finishing touches are the perfect way to finish an art journal. That's why I have a video right here with 5 different techniques that will help you add the perfect finishing touches to any art project.